Amen. Okay, before I get into the message, though, I've got another thing that I want to talk about for a few minutes. We, as a church here at the Desert Vineyard, we're about four things. We're about helping people find and follow Jesus. We're about turning compassion into action. We're about pursuing the presence of God, and we're about doing life together. Okay, those are kind of our four things that we're about as a church. So every November now, we started last year doing this thing where we're taking the month of November, and we are highlighting all month this compassion into action offering that we will take at the end of the month. Well, the 23rd, 24th, that weekend. The last full weekend, the last Sunday of the month of November, we're taking a compassion into action offering that weekend. So you're going to hear about it this week and the following 2 weeks, and then the next week we do it. So last year we did this, and just in our Lancaster campus here, not including Tehachapi, just here at Lancaster, we took in $40,000 in that compassion to action offering. It's awesome. You guys stepped up and gave tremendously, and we were able to do a number of things, but the biggest thing that we did with that money is start the Hope Center. We purchased a 2-stall shower, and listen, last weekend, last Monday, the Hope Center's open. We service homeless people that are in need, an array of services. You know, we give out clothing and shoes and there's computer access. There's different services available to them. And we provide free showers, right? These clean, wonderful, beautiful, hygienic showers. So last Monday, we had 57 people come through the Hope Center. Isn't that awesome? Like it is taking hold, and people are using it. People are trusting us, and it's awesome. We're so excited. We're so grateful for those of you that not only gave toward that, but also those of you that serve consistently at the Hope Center. We're so grateful for that, and it's so fun to just see it grow and grow. So we also did a couple things with that money. The bulk of it went to the Hope Center. We also supported a Christian nonprofit organization here in the Valley called Pen and Napkin. That what they do is they furnish apartments for people that are coming out of homelessness. They go in. It's like Extreme Home Makeover, but for the homeless that are getting apartments. It's an awesome organization. We helped them. And we helped two missionaries too with a kind of they needed some quick kind of emergency support, and we provided a little bit of that through our Compassionate Action offering. So that was last year. This year, what we're going to do, okay, we are going to do this offering again. So on the 23rd, 24th, I'm gonna get up here and I'm gonna ask you guys to give, okay? And I'm gonna paint over the next 3 weeks 3 targets that I want us to aim at this next year, okay? And all of these are gonna be new initiatives, just like last year was a new initiative, right? None of that money went to keep the lights on in the building or go to any salaries or anything existing at all. It was all the idea of this is like, I felt compelled by God to go, you know what? I think God wants us to push forward in the area of compassion, to do more than we're doing. We're already doing a bunch of stuff, but we want to be like Jesus, and Jesus was the man for others, right? So we want to do more. So this year, I'm gonna put 3 things in front of us that are new initiatives, and let me tell you how we're gonna do that. Because the Hope Center, now we started this thing, but now if we're giving out things, clothing and shoes and food and all this stuff, that costs money, right? There's ongoing operating costs to the Hope Center, and here's how we're not gonna have any of the Compassion into Action offering touch that. We are starting a coffee roasting company called Virtue Coffee Roasters, okay? Here's our brand identity right here. This is exciting. I don't know if you know this, but we did all the research, and there is no coffee roasting happening in the Antelope Valley at all. No one has a permit through the LA County Air Quality Control Board, okay? Nobody in the Antelope Valley is allowed to roast coffee. We're gonna be the only ones, okay? Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So we're gonna be roasting. We're likely getting this in December. We'll probably start around January. And so we're gonna not only be selling Virtue Coffee here in our services, right? We're gonna sell bags of fresh roasted coffee. And let me tell you, I've been home roasting for about 7 years. Fresh roasted coffee is a different animal than what you buy at the store. It is a completely different. If you start drinking coffee where the beans were roasted 2 days ago, It's gonna blow your mind. It's like, where's this been in my whole life? Like, why am I, drinking coffee that was roasted 2 months ago? You're gonna love it. Okay, so we're gonna sell bags of beans here, and you can buy them for coffee at home. We're gonna sell them around town. We're gonna sell them everywhere. You're gonna start seeing Virtue Coffee showing up at restaurants, at hopefully grocery stores. I want you to go into Target and be able to buy Virtue Coffee, okay? So, and the reason why we're doing this is all of the profits of Virtue Coffee are gonna support the Hope Center. All of it. All of it. Just go, nothing but the Hope Center. It's not gonna touch our church. It's not, it's all for the Hope Center. So that's how we're gonna fund the ongoing costs of the Hope Center. So let me talk about the first of 3 things of what we're gonna aim at for our Compassion into Action offering this year, okay? This week and the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna do one thing each week, okay? So I'm only gonna tell you the first thing this week, but I am gonna tell you that we don't know how much money's gonna come in, okay, to this offering. And so I'm gonna lay out 3 things in hopes that we could get to do 3 things. But we might only get to do 2 things, we might only get to do 1 thing. But what I will commit to is saying any money that we take in through the Compassion into Action offering will only go toward one of these 3 things, or 2 of them or 3 of them, okay? It's not gonna go to anything else, okay? These are the things. So the first thing I wanna talk to you about is Uganda. I just felt, as I was thinking about our kind of missions strategy and where we're touching down in the world, we're touching down in a number of places and doing some really good things. However, I read this book called Factfulness about kind of the global health of the world and all this, and it highlighted that really it's no longer just the undeveloped world and the developed world. It's not like 2 halves or something. There's quadrants. If you sort of map out life expectancy of a country, and then this way you go the average income that people are making, then, in quadrant 4, you got the US and Europe and Japan and all these rich countries. Lots of money, long life expectancies, okay? Then the graph kind of breaks down into, quadrants. And so down at the bottom, level 1 countries are those with the lowest life expectancy and the lowest amount of income per person, okay? So I read that and I went, you know what? I want us working in a level 1 country. I want our compassion reaching into a place in the world where people really are the poorest of the poor. And so by a number of circumstances, it ended up, got opened a door to Uganda. And this last summer, I went on an exploratory trip to Uganda to check out, might this be the place where, God wants us to touch down and really do something here. And so I went and I hooked in with a group of vineyard churches. We're a part of a vineyard network of churches here, and they're all over the world. And so there's vineyard churches in Uganda. There's about 40 or so. Most of them are quite small. There's nothing our size or anything like that, but still it's a growing, vibrant group of churches in Uganda led by a guy named Edward Semengo, who's just a fantastic guy. What I want to say, I'm going to in just a second show you some pictures of it, but I want you to know that I went there partially, drawn by this idea of like, I want us to be showing compassion into somewhere that is the poorest of the poor in the world. And I go to Uganda, and absolutely, Uganda is a poor country. But what I found there was it blew my mind. Number 1, the friendliness and kindness of the people. I've been to a lot of countries in my life. Uganda is bar none the friendliest, kindest culture I've ever encountered in the world. I have truly never encountered people that are so kind and gracious. And I thought it was just toward me in the beginning, because let's be honest, I stick out like a sore thumb in Uganda. It's not an ethnically diverse country in Africa, okay? There's different tribes, but I think I maybe saw 10 white people the whole time that I was there for a week. It's not a cultural, it's not a tourist kind of destination, right? And so I stuck out as a foreigner. Everybody knew that I was a foreigner. Okay, so I'm like, maybe it's just that. But then I started to really pay attention to watch how Ugandans interacted with other Ugandans. Just in my hotel, someone checking out of the hotel in front of me or around at the market or something. And I just went, no, this is just who they are. They are just this like unbelievably gracious and courteous and kind and kind of encouraging, affirming culture. So I loved that about them. But then I encountered the churches and I saw what they're doing, and I was so inspired. The things that the church in Uganda is doing with how little they have, the quality of their faith, the quality of their worship expression, their preaching, they're gathering together, their love for one another. I went, you know what we're going to do? We're going to step into partnering with brothers and sisters in Christ in the vineyard across the world, and we're gonna mutually bless one another. That's what we're gonna do in Uganda, okay? They have some needs, but honestly, we have some needs, right? We have some needs to be encouraged, to be lifted, to be shown what faith looks like in the midst of challenge that is unshakable. There's so many things. So what I wanna do is enter into this kind of partnership of faith with vineyards in Uganda. I wanna show you some pictures here. So why don't we roll that slideshow and I'm gonna talk through it. If you don't know where Uganda is, right here in Africa, it's kind of on the eastern side, Central Africa on Lake Victoria, which is the second largest freshwater lake in the world. Kampala, right there, is the capital city. That's where we are here. There's Edward Semengo, and then there's another vineyard pastor from Anaheim there. This is the national office of the Association of Vineyard Churches in Uganda. This is Edward's church. He meets in a circus tent because he hasn't been able to build a building yet, but it's awesome. And has a vibrant, thriving church. This is a school that he planted in the slums of Kampala, okay? Hundreds of kids in this school, and just filled with joy. I'm gonna show a short video clip here of their chapel service that's student-led worship, okay? That's awesome, right? And just think about it. This is where these kids live. They live in this slum. Their parents are prostitutes and drug addicts, and they live in the slum, and they're praising Jesus like that in the school. I want to move you over to Bwikwe, okay? This is about an hour and a half outside of Kampala. Another vineyard Christian school that was started here. That's a new work in a largely Muslim area, okay? And the Muslims are excited that the school is coming. This is inside some classrooms here. They want the school there, even though it's a Christian school, because the national language is English. And if you don't have enough money to go to school, you don't get to learn English, okay? So now we're going to move over to Busia, right on the coast of the edge of Kenya. This is a man named Thomas Oyonyo. He's a vineyard pastor, amazing, amazing man. And this is his vineyard church here. It's a mud wall church. He packs it out every Sunday. It's awesome. And he built this school, mud wall school, 3-room schoolhouse. And he actually has 6 classes of kids, but he's only got 3 classrooms. This is inside one of the classrooms, mud walls. The floor is made out of cow dung mixed with dirt to make it harder. That's their toilet for the kids. It's a pit latrine just right out there in the open. And these are the trees outside of the classroom that he has. 3 classes are held under those trees because there's not even space. There's 6 classes of kids and only 3 classrooms. And so he goes, it's fine if it's a nice day, but it's pretty challenging when it rains. And it rains a lot in Uganda, let me tell you. It's like a tropical country, all right? It's right on Lake Victoria, and it's just green everywhere and rains a ton. So listen, I wanted to give you a snapshot of 3 of the places that I went to where the vineyard is planting churches, expanding, growing, is starting up Christian schools where just lots and lots of kids that are in really difficult, broken environments are coming and learning about Jesus, and they're just doing amazing things. I want us to partner with them on some projects. I want to do a water project to provide water, probably for that school in Bwikwe. They have to go 2 miles to get dirty water. So I want to put a well in at that school and have that be an even greater blessing to that whole Muslim community, okay? And there's also opportunities to expand some of their schools and build actually cinder block buildings and also some churches and stuff. And so we're going to do a project. We're going to send a work trip out this next summer from our church here, if you've got skills, we want you to go to Uganda if you know how to build stuff, because we're going to go and do a work trip. That's what Edward asked for. He goes, could you bring a team of people here and help us build some stuff? So I want to do that this year, okay? So this is one of the things that I want to go, let's do some good in a part of the world where God's kingdom is expanding like crazy. They're doing amazing things, and yet they have very, very little resource. We have a lot of resource. Even those of us that feel like we're struggling, right? Even those of us, I mean, if you have running water in your house, you are wealthy in Uganda. I mean, like you don't understand the like, just by virtue of where we live, the kinds of things that we have access to is just not how everybody lives. Okay, so I want us to reach out and be a blessing to people in Uganda. Okay, so that's the first thing that we're looking at doing. Okay, you're gonna find out two more things come the next 2 weeks. All right, and we're gonna talk about two more targets that we want to put in front of us. And I really do want you guys to pray, to consider what God might want you to do. Over and above your normal giving in the church, November 23rd, 24th, we're going to give toward doing some good in the world, toward turning our compassion into action in really fresh new ways that are pushing forward what our church is doing. All right? Okay, now, how much time do I have? 19 minutes this time. It was 21 minutes last night. I'm getting even less time for the message today. Open up your Bibles if you brought one to 2 Samuel chapter 11. That's where we are today. We're in this series called Inside Out, where we're looking at how what's inside of us, our character, does come out in terms of our outcomes in our life. Okay, so we're looking at people in the Old Testament stories of 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, and 1 Kings, those three books. And we're looking at key figures, and we're looking at how their inward life, their character, really affects the rest of their life. Right now, we're looking at King David, all right? And so King David, up until this point, has been largely just a heroic figure. Not a lot of faults or character issues have been demonstrated thus far. He was born in really humble circumstances. He was the youngest son, how many sons? 10 sons Jesse had, and he's all the way the youngest. He was out tending the sheep, the lowest job, and ends up being used by God to slay the giant Goliath. And he's rocketed into kind of fame and success. And then everything he does just has God's favor on it. And then the king Saul gets jealous of David, thinks that David's going to take over from him. And so Saul starts to trying to kill David. But David, again, his character, he continues to honor Saul. Even when Saul's trying to kill him, he does what's right. He has opportunity to kill Saul, and he won't do it because he goes, that's God's anointed. God made him king. Who am I to kill him? And so ultimately, Saul ends up dying at the hand of the Philistines in his own hand. He's mortally wounded in battle and then falls on his sword and dies. And so after that, David is the clear leader. And he takes over Judah, the kingdom of Judah, but it's divided. So there's the house of Saul in Israel is now warring against the house of David in Judah. And so it's messy for a little while. But then David actually takes over. He kind of wins. Everyone goes over to David's side. And now he is the king of a unified nation of Judah and Israel together. And so up until this point, David's just this like hero figure. But then we get to this story that David was really good under challenge. But now that he has great success, now that he has great power, now that he's king and can relax a little bit, now we see that there are some blind spots in his character, that there are some problems underneath that come out. Okay, so we're going to look at this in 2 Samuel chapter 11. Let me read the first few verses here. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. And from the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite." Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Now she was purifying herself from her monthly uncleanness. Then she went back home. Now let's stop there for a second. And I want to talk about this a little bit. This is what I'm going to call David's first mistake. Okay? His first mistake is that he is king. He's got all this power. At this point, he's got 2 wives that we know of, okay? Saul's daughter, Michal, was his first wife. And then he ends up marrying Abigail that we looked at a couple of weeks ago, who, she had the kind of the surly husband, Nabal, who, was rude to David. But then God ended up killing Nabal. And after that all happened, David kind of strolls up to Abigail and goes, "Hey, you want to be my wife?" And she goes, "Yeah." So he gets a second wife, right? See, this is why, everything in the Bible, you can't just take it and go, "Hey, it's in the Bible, I get to do it," right? Because polygamy is all over the Old Testament, all right? It's teaching us something about what not to do. At the same time as it's teaching us about what to do, okay? And so David has 2 wives. He's king. He gets whatever he wants. He's up on the rooftop palace, and he looks, and he sees a really beautiful woman bathing. Now, before we conjure up images of what that might look like, scholars go, look, this doesn't even necessarily imply that she is scantily clad or nude, okay? She might just be, kind of cleaning her arms off or something, right? That he sees her, though. He sees her, and he goes, "Wow, she's a beautiful woman. I want to find out about her." Okay, he's got a desire for her, and he wants to know more. Someone goes and asks and comes back and goes, "Hey, got some bad news. She's married, bro. She's married." And David, now we don't get to know what his thought process is here, whether this was an unwanted desire or if he would just like, "Well, I don't even care." We don't know. We don't know how, but I do know something about sin. When we allow sin to grow in our hearts, when we just sort of give in to desires that are not in alignment with how God wants us to live, there's this thing that happens. Sin actually makes us stupid. It starts talking to our brain, and it goes, no, this actually is a good idea. You should do this, right? And we convince ourselves about how great of an idea this is, even though later on we look back, we go, what was I thinking, right? That's just sin's impact on our brains, okay? Sometimes I love to check in on just stories of dumb criminals, right? And last week, there's a guy in Lincoln, Nebraska, walks into a bank with a $1 million bill and says, "I'd like to open a savings account, please. Here's a $1 million bill I'd like to put into a savings account." I don't know if you know this, but the largest denomination that the U.S. Treasury has ever produced is a $10,000 bill. There is no $1 million bill, right? But this guy's like, "No, I got a genius idea to get more money. I'll just make a $1 million bill. It's so simple, right?" It's like, no. A couple years ago, there was a guy in Florida that crashed his car into a jail. He was trying to break into the jail to hang out with his buddies. And he couldn't get all the way through the gate, through the fence, and so he tried to climb over it. He got caught in the razor wire, and they had to get him out and get him medical care because he was all cut up and stuff. He wanted to go hang out with his buddies that were inside. Who does that? Who thinks that's a good idea for me in my life, to break into a jail, right? And I can't tell you how many stories I've read. This is like a thing. This is not just one person. So many people that are burglars, that burglarize homes when no one's there. They break into your house, and then they go, "Oh, there's a computer on. Well, I'll just check my Facebook real quick." And they log into Facebook, and then they don't log out. And so people, this is like lots of people do this. People come home, and they go, "Oh my gosh, my house is ransacked." They go, "Why is this random person logged into my Facebook?" And the person gets caught, right? Sin makes you stupid. It affects you. You think things are really great ideas when they're not. And so let me tell you one strategy. If you have a desire, an unwanted desire that pops up in your life, you go, "How do I deal with this? I really want to do this thing." One way to approach this, one strategy, is to step back and go, how will this affect my life if I act on this desire? Is the version of me like 1 year from now me? 2 years from now me? 5 years from now me? Gonna look back on this and go, boy, that was a great idea. Or if I go through with this unwanted desire for my coworker, even though maybe I'm married or I'm engaged to somebody and about to be married or whatever it is, that you step back and go, oh, if I act on this unwanted desire, I'm going to destroy all of these relationships over here that are so precious to me. Right? I wish David could have done that. I wish David would have stepped back and did a little cost-benefit analysis of what this is going to cost him if he acts on this desire. There's another dimension to this, though, of course, of power. He's the king. And you notice in this story, he just sends for Bathsheba. And she comes, and he sleeps with her. Okay? He's king. He gets whatever he wants. You don't say no to a king at this point, right? In this point in history, like that he gets whatever he wants. And so he abuses his power against this woman, Bathsheba. This is a whole other dimension of making mistakes and bad choices when you are in a position of power over someone else, maybe in your workplace, or even in a church setting. You might be a leader or a pastor. There's a pastor I'm not gonna say where. I'm not gonna say names or churches or anything. But I read a story this week about a guy that last year, 2018, he had to step down from the church that he was a pastor at because 20 years ago, he, as a youth pastor, sexually assaulted a woman, an underage girl that was a part of his youth group, and it never got reported. And so 20 years later, there's this kind of Me Too movement in the country, in the world. I'm sure you're aware about that. I don't know if you're aware, there's also a Church Too movement, okay, of victims of sexual assault that have happened in a religious environment that are going, you know what? I never spoke out, and it's time to speak out. And so this woman spoke out. And, this guy, yeah, absolutely. She spoke out, and this guy, she actually emailed him. He didn't email her back. The next week, so she contacted a blog. He just knew what was coming because he knew he did it. And he got up before the church and he said, hey, I'm really sorry. I had this consensual relationship with this person. I was in the wrong, but that wasn't what it was. The church, in fact, actually ended up applauding him, but then later when people really discovered the details of what happened, that he sexually assaulted a 17-year-old girl against her will. And then he was like, okay, I have to step down. And he's like, I was wrong before. I recognize this is an abuse of power. I was in a position of power over her as a pastor. She trusted me, and I betrayed that. Well, that was last year. This year, he's starting another church now. He's just going across town and going, hey, I want to be a pastor again, okay? Now, the gospel is about forgiveness and grace and mercy, okay? But when you cross a line of abuse of spiritual power over somebody, okay? A lot of people, a lot of pastors, theologians, people that think about this would say, that's a one strike and you're out offense for future pastoral leadership, okay? That you are a child of God, you can be forgiven, you can be, but you don't get to be a pastor anymore. If you abuse your pastoral power against somebody else, one strike, you're out, go find a job somewhere else, okay? David abuses his power as king. Bathsheba doesn't get a choice here. He goes, come here. And she comes and he abuses her and sends her away. But then, the story continues. I want to continue here. Something else happens, right? The next line says, verse 5, the woman conceived, David, and sent word to David saying, I am pregnant. So David sent this word to Joab, his right-hand hatchet guy, his commander. Send me Uriah the Hittite, this woman's husband, who's a warrior on the battlefield. And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was and how the soldiers were and how the war was going. And David said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go home to his house. David was told Uriah did not go home. So he asked Uriah, haven't you just come from a military campaign? Why didn't you go home? Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my Lord's men are camped in open country. How could I go to my house and eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing. Then David said to him, stay here one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on his mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it to Uriah. In it, he said, put Uriah out in front where the fighting is fiercest, then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die. So while Joab had the city under siege, he put Uriah at a place where he knew the strongest defenders were. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. See, now we get a glimpse at the mistake after the mistake, which ends up being worse and more harmful to people than the mistake itself. And this can be so often the case in our lives. We make a mistake and we go, oh no, I'm gonna get found out about this. I've gotta do something. And so what does David do when he gets word that the woman that he sexually assaulted is pregnant? He goes, oh no, people are gonna know because her husband is one of my soldiers out fighting the war. So there's no way that it could have been him. People probably saw her come into my palace. They're gonna make a link here. So he goes, okay, strategy number one, I am going to cover it up through deception. I'm gonna make people think that it was Uriah. So let's get Uriah back home. And let's get him to go home and be with his wife. That'll fix it. Then no one will know it's me, okay? But Uriah, of course, he's too big of a Boy Scout, right? He's got too much honor. Too much nobility. He's like, my fellow soldiers are out in the field. I'm not going to go home and enjoy myself. No way. Not when all of them are out there in the field. And so David goes, okay, come over to my house for some dinner. And let me just keep serving you drinks, okay? The text literally says David made him drunk, okay? David's forced him, giving him drink after drink, okay? So you're right. He's thinking maybe if he gets a little tipsy, maybe then he'll want to go home to his wife. Still, it doesn't work, right? Still, this guy, even in a state of drunkenness, is like, I have honor. I'm not going home. So, David figures out that lying and deceit isn't going to get it done for him. So, what does he do next? He does whatever it takes. Whatever it takes to make sure that this secret doesn't come out. And so what it takes is that he's going to have Uriah killed. He sends a note with Uriah. So Uriah has to actually carry the letter that has his own death sentence in it to his commander that he's so loyal to, Joab. And Joab is just supremely loyal to King David. He's like, whatever King David tells me to do, I'm going to do it. And so that's what he does. He sends Uriah out to the fiercest part where the fighters are the best fighters against them and pulls people back, and Uriah is killed on the battlefield. It's like, wow, you are digging yourself into a hole, David, right? To try to get yourself out of a mistake that you made. See, this story is painting a picture here of something that is so important for us to grab our minds around. Of course, we don't want to make the first mistake. And I could stand up here and I could spend the whole message talking about how you should remain faithful to your spouse if you're married, how if you're single, you should remain faithful with your sexuality and not look at porn and, not have sex with people unless you're married and all that. We could spend the whole time talking about that. And that's all good and real and valid, okay? But this story, the thing that makes it so much worse is the cover-up, is the series of decisions that David made to hide his mistake, to make sure that his mistake doesn't come out. And that's what harms someone, Uriah, to the point of even losing his life. This story, to me, highlights our need for the gospel of Jesus Christ, that tells us no matter what we've done, Jesus will forgive us. No matter how terrible of a secret that we have, that if we turn our lives to Jesus, that he died on a cross for us, for everything that we've done wrong. He knows it all, right? And he will forgive us. But the thing that we have to do is actually turn toward Jesus and admit that we're wrong. And if we don't do that, right, like this story, we're going to look at the sort of second half of this story next week about where everything really unravels. But what I want to simply kind of end on this week is the last line in this chapter that shows us that even if David has all the power, even if he can do this to Bathsheba and do this to Uriah and think that he's gotten off scot-free, look at how this story kind of ends in the last couple of verses. Verse 26, when Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. See, friends, whether you're have been a victim of someone else's abuse, of their power, or however you've been victimized and hurt by somebody, or whether you are somebody that has done that to somebody else, whatever side you might find yourself on in that, know that God sees everything. That God is the one that stands over all of us, no matter how much power or how little power we have, no matter if we've actually gotten away with it and covered it up or not. There is a God in heaven that sees. And in this text, this story ends with simply this ominous phrase that the thing that David did displeased the Lord. We're going to see it unravel next week, okay? We're going to see that God begins to lay out what the consequences are going to look like for him. But this week, I simply want you to grab hold of that idea that there is a God in heaven that sees and that will act with justice. Martin Luther King Jr. said the arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Meaning it might take a little while, but there really is an arc to the universe. There really is a God that sees everything and is leaning toward justice. And so if you're in a place of having a secret in your life, my encouragement to you, like the actionable thing to do, is to tell on yourself before you get caught by someone else or by God. Tell on yourself, okay? If you have some deep, dark secret and you go, no, this can't ever come out, all right? I was watching a BBC show. I like these kind of police procedural, British drama TV shows. And I was watching one, and this guy, one of the cops, he ended up having an affair. He's married, he loves his wife, but he has an affair with a woman one night, and he's deeply ashamed. He feels so bad about it. He's talking to his coworker about it, and his coworker goes, "Oh, well, you're never gonna do it again, right?" No, I would never do that again, never. And you love your wife, right? I deeply love my wife, I just love her. Well, don't tell her then, is what the counsel of the coworker is. The coworker says, don't tell her, it'll only hurt her. Just go back to your marriage and just never do it again. And I thought, wow. Then for the rest of your life, what you're gonna live is in the fantasy of having a marriage, not the reality. All relationships are built on trust. And if you have a secret in a relationship with a spouse, with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, even with a family member or something where you're going, I have this secret and I don't want it to come out, you don't have real relationship that's built on trust. You have a facade, you have a fantasy. And sometimes as a pastor, people will come to me and they'll confess. Like maybe a husband will come and confess that he loves his wife, but he had an affair and wants to know what to do. So my counsel, unlike this BBC police procedural, my counsel is follow in the directions of Jesus, who said the truth will set you free, right? The truth will set you free. Go tell the truth. And people go, I can't do that, right? And I go, well, there was this movie that I really liked called We Bought a Zoo. Back in 2011, it came out. It's about this guy that's a widower. He loses his wife. He's got some kids. They buy a zoo. And it's kind of this heartwarming, actually more like, heart-wrenching kind of a drama. But there's this line in this movie that's just stuck with me, where the father, he's got this 14-year-old son, and the son likes this girl, and he's terrified to talk to her. He can't let her know or anything, and he's asking his dad for advice, and his dad takes a moment with him, and he says, son, all you need is 20 seconds of insane bravery. Just absolute insane courage for 20 seconds. That's all it takes. And so his son, kind of is encouraged by that, But that idea has stuck with me, and that if you have a secret, that's my counsel to you. All it takes is 20 seconds of insane bravery. Now, what happens after that 20 seconds? I had a guy come back that was mad at me. Was like, it went terrible. And I'm like, of course it did. Of course. There's going to be a nuclear bomb that goes off in your relationship. But it has to if you ever want a shot at having real relationship. This is what you have to go through. It has to get worse before it gets better. And I tell you, as followers of Jesus, Jesus is about truth. He's about the light shining on us. He doesn't care how dark our secrets are. He wants us to bring it out into the light. It's not the mistake that's a problem for Jesus. It's the cover up. It's the inability, the refusal for us to open our lives up. That's the thing that keeps us away from the gospel of grace. But the mistakes that we make, it doesn't matter. There was a guy, I'll close with this. There was a guy a couple years ago, Brian Hawkins, up in Redding, California. He goes walking into a TV news station one day, and he goes, hi, I'd like to confess to a murder that happened 20 years ago. And they're like, okay, we're gonna call the cops? And he goes, yeah, please do. That's my next place. I'm gonna go to the cops and turn myself in. And he said, 20 years ago, I killed, along with two other people, we lured a man named Frank McAllister out into the country because we had heard that he had come into some insurance money. We wanted that money. We were on drugs. So we said, hey, we're going to sell you methamphetamine. Come out, meet us at this place, this remote location. And then we murdered him. We disposed of his body. We drove his car to the Costco parking lot, and we got away with it scot-free. The cops investigated this, and they came up with nothing. And here it is 20 years later. I mean, he's like, they got away with it. They're home free. And he goes, I want to confess to it. And the news anchor was like, why are you doing this? And he goes, because I became a Christian. And I need to take responsibility for my actions. I know that this isn't going to, make right what I did wrong. But God has been working on me and working on me. And I need to come clean and do what's right because I'm a Christian. See, friends, that's the gospel right there. That's a guy that actually gets it, right? That goes, I don't care. Even that I murdered somebody with a knife. Even that, Jesus can find grace and forgiveness. But what I need to do is walk out into the light. That's the thing that really matters. Let's stand up together and pray. I know I'm touching on something that is deep, that is difficult, that, I'm not going to right now do an invitation for you to come forward or something like that. If this is, if I'm talking to you, I want to pray over all of us. I'm not even going to invite you to lift your hand or anything like that. I want to pray and ask God to bring courage and bravery into us, for that 20 seconds of courage needed to step out. If there's an area of secrecy, of darkness in our life, I want to invite God's Spirit to lead us out into the light. And if you want to grab hold of this prayer, then you can just agree with me in your heart if you want to. Jesus, we ask God for your Spirit to come. We ask for you, Spirit of God, to rest on us, to come and give us something that we lack. Give us something that we haven't had yet in our life. Give us the courage, the bravery, the strength to walk into the light, to walk into the confession of sin, the taking responsibility for the things we've done wrong. For some of us that might be hiding, that might be deeply ashamed, that might be going, I never want to do that again, and I'm making this commitment to never do it again, but I don't ever want to say what I did. I pray, Jesus, that you would not leave them trapped in that prison, that you would lead them into the freedom of full disclosure, the freedom of honesty, the freedom of truthfulness at every level in our lives. God, would you give us the courage to move toward the truth? May your light shine on us. May your love shine on us. May your grace shine on us, God. May the gospel of Jesus Christ make a difference in our lives. We receive your forgiveness, Lord. And I pray that you would help us move out into the light. In Jesus' name, amen.